So we've got a wonderful opportunity to talk to Dr. Andrew Cross, who's the formerly president and CTO of NewTek, and now is the president of research at the newly merged VizRT and NewTek. And this is probably one of the most exciting developments at NAB. So we're really looking forward to this interview.
RedShark's NAB coverage is brought to you by NewTek, G Technology, Blackmagic Design, and Adobe.
Andrew, thanks ever so much for joining us. And it's been an interesting few weeks, I guess.
Yes, it's been a very tiring few weeks.
Yeah, of course.
But it's super exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, you know, you can kind of sense the synergy between the two companies, but can you elaborate on that? Because you must have been involved in the discussions for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we've honestly been talking about this in some way, shape or form for years and years now. And, you know, unlike most of these kind of mergers or acquisitions, this is one that didn't start off with kind of bankers and business people. I mean, you know, I was friends with the co-founder of Viz, and we started talking about it. And then he said, hey, so shall I try taking this to my CEO and see what he thinks? And that's kind of how it got started. So it really was very much, you know, something that started out of a discussion on how to make the business better, how to make it more exciting, how to take, you know, what to many people look like fundamentally different companies, but we share a very similar philosophy. And, you know, what could we do with that if we really tried? And so that's, you know, it's been a very interesting ride, very exciting.
But and all of that makes complete sense. But what is the actual purpose of the collaboration?
So I think that, you know, that there's obviously a lot of things, and it is funny how when we started, you know, kind of like saying, okay, let's play devil's advocate, let's look at this, let's see if this would work. You know, it just became so obvious that where we were different, it was such a great opportunity to complement each other because, you know, NewTek are very strong in the United States. Viz aren't that strong in the United States. We have a great channel. They're very good at direct sales. You know, we exist in the low and mid ends of the market. They exist in the high end of the market. And while a lot of people probably think, well, gosh, what have these got to do with each other? The thing is that when you put them together, we aren't sitting here going, okay, so are we going to take this graphics team or this graphics team? Okay, these guys are gone. I mean, it's like, you know, we're just completely complementary, which is quite remarkable. And I think that, you know, that is exciting. So, you know, I think that the new entity in many ways, this is what I would say, is we you know, as you walk around NAB, there are lots of companies that are 30, 40 years old that have grown out of, you know, the traditional way broadcast done, and they've grown up, and they're now middle-aged, and they you'll see, you know, computers on there and IP and so on their booths, but the reality is that's not their DNA. They are still really traditional companies, and I'm not really bashing that, but we wanted to build a company that's not that, and we're the first serious company that is not that. We're the first serious company that is saying, look, software, IP, networks, computers, those are the future, and we're not that. We're not this entity that's grown out of, you know, 40 years of FPGA-based solutions. We are something different, and you know, I'm not trying to say one's wrong and one's right, but we are fundamentally something different, and you know, to the market. And I think that, you know, that is, and it's needed. Quite frankly, it's really needed, and that's exciting.
It does seem to me that there's something almost transcendent in what you're saying. You know, moving beyond hardware, moving into this virtual IP world, yes. And of course, this is not a process that has just happened. We've been moving into IP ever since, well, you know, ARPANET and so
absolutely.
On. But I guess what's happened is the speed at which we can move data around now, yes. And the strength with which we can process it.
Yes, absolutely. And look, I mean, it boils down to economics. I mean, you know, and if you come to NAB, you probably think pretty large show, but at a kind of global technologies show. Scale, the scale of what we're doing in video is tiny. when you compare it to how many phones there are, how many computers there are, how much, and that is important, because the reason that people are talking about IP is because it's become so affordable and so flexible to use IP, which was driven by much bigger markets than ours. And that's what's really happening here, is that companies like ourselves are just saying, look, there is this huge consumer space that has driven cameras down to a price that is, just unimaginable. These things are faster than a supercomputer, 5 years ago. That's been driven by consumer technology. How do you take that and apply it to this market? Because it is going to change our market, whether we like it or not, and whether we're the company doing it or not. It is going to happen.
At the point where you've got 1,000-fold increases in whatever every few years, I think one great example is how it's possible using NDI to connect a phone to a switcher, a TriCaster. And a few years ago, if you tried to explain to somebody that you were going to connect your telephone to a video device and use it in a broadcast, they think this is a philosophical category mistake, I
mean, gosh, yes. Think 15 years ago when you had traditional phones and say, well, I'm going to connect this to a switch. They'd probably send you to a loony asylum, And
now it makes complete sense. You're still going to, have conventional, cameras like the red camera we're shooting this with. But at the same point, if you need an extra point of view, it's an absolutely viable way to do it.
Yes, and I actually think you made a great point there as well, which is I think that there is always going to be a demand and a need for high-end production, high-end cameras. They will exist. And what's happening, though, is that it's broadening out so that everybody can make production. And so it's not like this cliff you fall off where there's the high-end and then whatever. It's a much more gradual thing. And an example I've given a few times this week is, it's crazy to think that we're in a world where a gamer in their bedroom starts by streaming on the internet and is a multi-millionaire a few years later, and with a TV studio that's every bit as sophisticated. And that just shows, this ramp that has existed now where the barriers between a high-end producer and really, I don't want to say low-end, but an enthusiast have become great so much. And that applies, while that applies to that game stream, it also applies to TV stations. TV stations aren't just producing TV in 1 or 2 channels for viewing on a 4:3 monitor anymore. They're producing channels that are going into local markets that have slightly different content.
Some of the most watched, if you like, video podcasts, so they are the most watched TV programs, full stop.
Yes. It is crazy that a lot of podcasts, so in the United States, you have this phenomenon of local broadcasters, and so most towns have a local news station. And we're very easily at the stage where even a mid-popularity web stream has more simultaneous viewers than a local news station. That's crazy. I mean,
well, it's the long tail, isn't it?
It
it's where you have like the Super Bowl and the Olympics right at the top of the curve, and they'll still get millions of viewers. But if you integrate across the long tail of the smaller and smaller broadcasts, many of which would not be possible without streaming technology, and with the help of things like PTZ cameras and NDI. So we recently did an event in London where we had no video cables. It was a multi-camera shoot with a studio audience streaming it live. It was all NDI, and this is just the start, presumably.
I think something that's vastly underestimated that actually we contributed to, and I'm not trying to toot our own horn here, but the concept of integrated production, where you take all, because if you go back 20 years, you needed a whole room of equipment to make a TV show. And one of the things that we believed is that you can take all of this and put it into a single computer, and that is truly important if you want to allow everybody to make video, and because you can't, that is one of the prerequisites, is that you can have the equipment to do it. And before, there was this concept of integrating all of this equipment down into a single system that can do the media playback, the titles, the video switching, and so on. It would never have been possible. Even if the networking had been there, you would never have been able to make a show. And so I actually think that the kind of the concept of integrated production actually is one of the larger drivers of video growth than probably a lot of people think. That and nonlinear, of course. I mean, nonlinear has changed the world as well.
But also beyond that, integrated, but also distributed, presumably.
Yes. Well, you know, now we're moving in, you know, to where networks are fast enough that you can just pull together cameras from, you know, cheap phones. I mean, we've probably got more phones in this room than people almost. And you know, I mean, it's clearly all coming together in kind of an incredible way. And I think, you know, we're just starting, because I think that there's, you know, we really are at just the tip of the iceberg. I think that the technologies as they move forwards, and IP as it moves forwards, is going to start doing things that are not. Right now we're in this phase where it's just a replacement in some way for SDI. And I think people, I always say, when you set up an IP video switch, suddenly, I don't know what it is, it feels different. It's not just like the same thing SDI moved to IP. And I can't actually completely put my hands on why that is, but it feels different. But I think that we're still at the very much the beginning of this. We're just kind of turning this into this. And I think that it, you know, things like the bidirectional nature of IP, where, you know, our whole camera ecosystem, everything has been designed that everything flows downhill from the camera to the viewer. That's all gone, because there's equal direction, so you can flow metadata back that can be used in all sorts of incredible ways. You know, IP over a network it's just video data that's flowing around a network. It's digital. You can take it on disk, and that might seem like that obvious, yes. But now think about those real-time production systems. They don't care whether they're getting fed as just a set of bytes off, you know, if a network is live or not live. And so suddenly even the concept between what's nonlinear and what's live has changed. And so I think that those things are going to start to make something very, very different. And I think the 5 and 10 years out, we're going to see that the whole way production is looked at is just fundamentally different, and it's not just been a replacement for a cable.
And rather than, you know, individual even network connections, you'll end up with conceptually at least a fabric through which everything.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, you know, it's kind of ironic. We're still thinking about video as a local thing, and I think that it's very obvious that you're going to be able to access, you know, if you're trying to do a camera shoot somewhere in the world, that you can just access its camera somewhere else. And use it, and obviously there's security, but you know, I mean, clearly the internet connects all digital devices in the world together. Bandwidth is going up, compression is getting better, and they're all going to become interconnected, and that's just a matter of time.
So we've got limited time for this, but I'd just like to finish by asking you, what are your aspirations? I'm not going to say necessarily in your new role, but generally, what would you like to see in terms of you know, the progress of technology?
You know, what's always driven me, so I did my PhD in computer vision, and I'm not saying that in any way it was never that was exciting. It's how do you take really cool technology and turn it into something that makes a difference somewhere? Because that's where, you know, there's lots of people who know how to make a difference. There's lots of people who have really cool technology, and there's so much great research out there. But how do we take that and turn it into something real that makes a difference to real people, allows them to do new things? And that's my aspiration personally, and I think that is also why, you know, NewTek have put up with me so long, is that's the aspirations of NewTek, which has always been, I think, how do we take something and how do we make really cool technology that can actually go out and make a difference to people? And, you know, we have this fundamental belief that if we do that, you know, the commercial angle, all of that will follow, because you're doing something that matters to people. And I think that has always been our aspiration, and is still our aspiration. And I'm still super excited by that, and think there's still so much. I mean, we're just at the beginning of all of this. So
that is the most exciting thing of all, isn't it? The sense that we're just at the beginning of something.
Yes, absolutely. I think that we're going to see quicker change than we've seen before. It took us. You know, it's a bit like, you know, how life forms, you know, created. It took millions of years for them to get out the water, and suddenly everything exploded. And it took us, you know, decades to get off custom proprietary protocols and SDI into a world where everybody can see anything and share anything. And now the explosion is going to happen. And I'm utterly convinced of that, and I think that's going to be an exciting time, and I hope that we just leave a little mark on it somewhere. So.
Okay, well, it's nice to hear an optimistic viewpoint. I must say I agree with you. Andrew, thanks.
Well, thank you. I love talking to you, Dave. Thank you so much.
It's mutual.